It's astounding. Time is fleeting. Madness takes its toll. But listen closely.
Not for very much longer.
I've got to keep control.
Guys, it is raining like crazy right now. Like, I was at Walmart earlier and I thought that the gods of Earth were going to strike me for something evil that I had done. I mean, I haven't done anything too evil recently. At least not that I know of. Anyway, welcome to yet another Blu-ray update video. This is the 6th Blu-ray update video in a long-running series. If you guys would like to watch the previous ones, I'll go ahead and leave a link in the comment section down below. But I've got a really exciting haul to show you today. I've been going out, and I actually have been spending money at a good number of locations, mostly at Z Records, which, as I mentioned before, is a really awesome local used movie chain. I've also been going to Barnes & Noble because they have Criterion Collection titles 50% off right now. That's not a plug-in. I'm just really excited because I love the Criterion Collection, and I hope you enjoyed my little Rocky Horror skit that I filmed at the beginning of this video. I love Rocky Horror Picture Show. In fact, I find myself wearing lingerie some evenings in homage to Tim Curry. That man looks absolutely fantastic in leggings, and I don't look too bad either. But you guys don't want to know about that. Let's talk about the horror Blu-rays that I purchased recently. First up is The Curse of Frankenstein. This was Christopher Lee's first attempt at playing Frankenstein. In fact, I think this was actually the first Hammer film that Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing starred in. They would be friends until their, final days. And this is an enjoyable enough Frankenstein feature. I think it was a decent attempt at bringing Mary Shelley's classic story to life. It's not one of my favorites. I would still say that Boris Karloff's version still takes the cake. But, as always, the colors in this movie are very vibrant, and so is the cinematography. I mean, the Hammer films in general just had such a vibrant energy to them. They're such a feast for the eyes and the imagination. And Christopher Lee, what he does here is he actually makes, at least in my opinion, the monster a bit more sympathetic than Boris Karloff. While I love Boris Karloff's portrayal, don't get me wrong, I thought Christopher Lee did an amazing job. Peter Cushing as the Mad Doctor, I mean, that guy is just fantastic. I mean, he has this wild pair of eyes. I mean, his eyes are constantly bulging throughout the film, and he just has that, dry wit to him. And he's a fantastic Dr. Frankenstein. One of the better Hammer horror films, in my opinion. And then we have the Arrow release of Hellraiser. This is a fantastic transfer. I just watched this for the first time recently, at least this transfer, and this is probably the best that Hellraiser has ever looked in. As far as the film itself, it's not one of my favorite horror films to come out of the 80s, but it certainly does have its merits. I love the look of all the Cenobites in this movie. I mean, Pinhead is just such a horror icon. Doug Bradley did an amazing job at bringing this character to life, and I mean, an instant horror icon was born out of this movie. It was based on a novel by Clive Barker. Can't remember the name of the book at the moment. Oh yes, it was called The Hellbound Heart. And Stephen King actually once called Clive Barker the future of horror. And he actually directed this film. Clive Barker directed this film himself, and he did a pretty decent job, although in some films, when you watch a movie like this in high definition, you can easily pick out certain flaws. Like, there's this one scene where one of the main protagonists is being chased down this dark hallway. She's being chased by this disgusting Lovecraftian creature, and you can clearly see, like, the rail that the creature is attached to. You can see the thing, you can see, like, the pulley, and, I mean, it doesn't take away from the film all that much, but Hellraiser, an enjoyable 80s film, and just remember, Jesus wept. The Criterion release of Island of Lost Souls. Island of Lost Souls, it's mostly notable for a very charismatic Charles Laughton performance, and also Bela Lugosi. Bela Lugosi plays one of the mutant creatures in this movie, and it is leagues better than the Island of Dr. Moreau with
Marlon Brando as the Doctor. Marlon Brando's character in that movie, he would inspire Dr. Mephisto in South Park. So yeah, this film is a lot better than that one.
Also, this doesn't have Val Kilmer, and I think any film is better off without Val Kilmer. And also, this is one of those classic black and white horror films, from the 30s, and it's just highly enjoyable. It's based on a novel by H.G. Wells. H.G. Wells, as you all know, was the author of The War of the Worlds, and I think it's a very interesting concept, just the idea of this man who wants to play God. He wants to create, these creatures. He wants his own creations, but at the end, these creations come back and ultimately tear him apart, and I think it's a very fascinating concept. And the Criterion Collection, they always do a fantastic job with their transfers, and this one is no different. Okay, so you ready to see... You ready for a found footage, guys? This was also produced by Eli Roth? Hold on a second. Yeah, this was produced by Eli Roth. Why do I own this? Eli Roth is like the bane of my existence. But I've talked enough about him. The Last Exorcism. What I like about this is that even though it's a found footage movie, the main character in this movie, he gives a very, very good performance. He essentially plays this Khan who, can supposedly, rid people of their demonic possessions, but he's just very charismatic, and the film is smart and entertaining, and they do some neat stuff in this movie. They add some new, elements to, the whole exorcism subgenre, and it was enjoyable enough. I mean, there are plenty of found footage films out there that are much, much better, films that are highly underrated. Check out Lake Mungo, by the way, Lake Mungo, and also I recently watched a film called Grave Encounters, which takes place in this dilapidated hospital, and that film was actually pretty chilling. But so is The Last Exorcism. I haven't watched the sequel, I heard it's not very good, so stick to the first one. Okay, we've already reviewed this, but The Lighthouse. This is a haunting, hypnotic movie. It says a lot about, the frail state of masculinity. The two men in this movie, played by Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson. Yeah, Robert Pattinson, he's proven himself to be a fantastic actor, by the way. I can't wait to see him just crush it as Batman. But they're both fantastic. They play these men who are stranded, on this island by themselves, and their, sanity gradually deteriorates, throughout the film, and it ultimately ends in bloodshed. Horrific bloodshed, by the way. And the film is just gorgeous. It is striking. It was directed by Robert Eggers, who also gave us The Witch, and he's proving himself to be, quite the horror auteur, because The Lighthouse, there are just so many shots in this movie, you could just hang them up on your wall. They are just gorgeous to look at. And yes, this is a film in which Robert Pattinson fucks a mermaid. I don't want to repeat that, but yes, he does. But please, don't think of the film as just that. It's so much more. Definitely give it a watch. My Bloody Valentine, the original. My Bloody Valentine, I think that's a nickname I gave to one of my exes. Anyway, so My Bloody Valentine, this is actually Quentin Tarantino's all-time favorite slasher film, and, it's one of those cheesy 80s slasher flicks that you have to watch at least once, and it's a 4K scan of the original camera negative, and it does look very good. This is one of the more enjoyable, 80s slashers. There were a lot of bad ones that came out during that era, but I think that this is one of the better ones, and I love the setting in the third act, where they're all trapped, in that underground mine shaft. It was a very compelling location. And, just the idea of being trapped down there, and you have this bloodthirsty psychopath just chasing after you with a pickaxe, it's pretty unnerving. And we're moving on to the end of this first pile here, which is Phantasm. Phantasm Remastered. Now, the most memorable sequence in this movie, oh my god. So, I don't know the exact name for it, but I always had this fear that someone is watching me, in my sleep. And there's a sequence in that movie, there's a sequence in this movie that kind of plays to that fear. There's a sequence where a little boy is alone in bed, and he opens his eyes, and the tall man is just looming over him, and he's in the middle of this gravesite, and all of a sudden these disgusting zombies just pop up out of the ground and devour him while he's in bed, and oh my god! Yeah, that scene, that scene really did a number on me, guys. The Phantasm, it's also remembered for the tall man's weapon. It's like this metal sphere that, can penetrate a person's skull. And yeah, there's some interesting ideas in this movie. When I watched it the first time, I found it to be a little bit dull, but it was one of those films that stuck with me, I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I gave it a rewatch recently, and I liked it a lot more the second time. And The Tall Man is another horror icon. They made a number of sequels to this film. I'm looking forward to checking those out as well. But Phantasm looks great. It has a tremendous horror villain. Check it out. Now, onto the second pile. First up, we have Ready or Not. I actually watched Ready or Not with my friend Thor in the theater, and I knew that she was going to like it, because just the premise alone, I mean, you have this young girl who, is tricked into marrying this man who belongs to this incredibly wealthy family, and they end up challenging her to a game of hide and seek, and, the trailer showed her hiding in all these places inside their mansion, and it just looked like a very entertaining game of cat and mouse, and it was a devilishly good time. And Samara Weaving in this movie, she is incredibly resourceful. I mean, she's intelligent, and did I mention that this is also more of a horror comedy? Because it certainly is. I mean, there are parts in this movie, particularly the scenes that feature Adam Brody, they are actually pretty humorous. I got a good number of chuckles out of this movie. And also, the final shot in this movie, where she is just covered in dirt and blood, and, she's sitting outside their house, and, she's just had a really terrible evening, and she just looks so done. I know they made a meme out of that final image. I think that summed up 2020 in a nutshell. But this would actually, this would be a good double feature with the film You're Next, directed by Adam Wingard. And they both feature these incredibly intelligent, resourceful heroines, and this was actually directed by the guys who are going to be giving us Scream 5. My dogs are getting all riled up right now. I think they're big Wes Craven fans, because I mentioned the title Scream and they get all excited. Anyway, let's get through the rest of this pile, guys, as my dogs continue to tear each other apart. Yeah. And dogs. If you guys don't know, I have a Corgi and a Chihuahua Terrier. Love you. Alright, moving on, we have a zombie classic, Return of the Living Dead. And, okay, just by looking at the poster of this movie, I knew exactly what kind of film this was going to be. This was going to be a heavy metal horror comedy, and it definitely is. I mean, none of the characters are incredibly deep, but the pacing in this film is relentless. It is just non-stop entertainment, and it features one of the greatest zombies of all time in the form of Oil Man. He delivered the classic zombie line, "Brains! Brains! I want brains!" It's a really fun movie. And also, so people like to cite Danny Boyle's 28 Days Later for being the film that really popularized the idea of zombies that can run really fast. The zombies in this movie, not only can they run fast, they're also pretty smart. Like, if I remember correctly, there's a scene where they actually use a policeman's radio to summon other policemen. So the zombies in this are resourceful and smart, and yeah, they run. So Danny Boyle, you don't own the patent on running zombies. Neither do you, Zack Snyder. Return of the Living Dead did it decades before your films came out. Another Japanese film, the original Ringu. Now, I'm kind of split here. I don't know if I like this or the American remake more. I think I'm going to go with this because usually when it comes to horror, subtlety is always better. This film is much more subtle than the American remake, starring Naomi Watts. And also, the male lead in this character, he has a much more substantial role. He's not just this guy who, they visit every now and then he gets killed off, in the third act. The ex-boyfriend character in this movie, he plays a much more substantial role. And I don't want to say this was the first film that used, the television as a... No, it's definitely not. Because, Poltergeist did that. Poltergeist, you had the TV, and that's, how all the ghosts made contact with the human world. But Ringu... let's just say, has a very terrifying scene involving a television. It's the infamous sequence where the demon child crawls out of the television screen. I mean, literally. That scene has been parodied so many times over the years. It is probably one of the most chilling sequences in horror history. I mean, just the idea that a scary character can literally crawl out of your television and attack you. I mean, that's not exactly the best feeling in the world. And Ringu, it also, it was one of those films that, you watch it and you're just like, man, I'm glad that VHS tapes aren't really popular anymore, because yeah, I would not want to get my hands on this VHS tape. The Rocky Horror Picture Show. I showed this off at the very beginning of this video. This film was like so much goddamn fun. And Tim Curry, oh my god, what a man. What a legend. Get it? Legend? Satan? Get it? Ha! Ha! Anyway, Rocky Horror Picture Show. One of my favorite musicals, personally. What makes a good musical for me, the musical numbers have to have a sense of kinetic energy to them, and the sequences in this definitely do. My favorite being Time Warp. I just love the choreography in that scene. I love how it cuts back and forth between the people in the mansion and the narrator. I just think it's such a fun ride. And of course, a young Susan Sarandon is in this movie. She sings the song "Touch It, Touch It, Touch It, Touch Me." I love that bit. From what I understand, this film wasn't incredibly popular when it was first released. It had been introduced on stage beforehand, and if I remember reading correctly, many of the cast members in this film originated their roles on stage, including Tim Curry, I believe. And it's a gender-bending, warped cult classic. It's become a midnight classic for a reason. It's one of those films that you can watch late at night with all of your friends, and you can sing along to the great songs. And Meatloaf, oh my god, when he bursts through the wall, on a motorcycle, I mean, that's the pinnacle of cinema right there. I love this movie. I love the songs. So much fun. We saw In the Heights, by the way. Not a horror movie, but another really good movie musical. So, Slither, directed by none other than James Gunn. Yes, that James Gunn, the man behind Guardians of the Galaxy and the Suicide Squad. This is a throwback to those 50s alien invasion films. You have these creepy crawlies who come to Earth and they wreak havoc on this small town. Nathan Fillion is hilarious in this movie. He plays this bumbling policeman. Michael Rooker, who is always fantastic. Even if he's in something like really shitty, Michael Rooker always puts in 110%. He's always entertaining as hell. Slither is very enjoyable, and the practical effects in this movie are astounding. I might be wrong about this, but I don't think they used any CGI at all, actually. I think this was all practical. Like, even the prosthetics that they put on Michael Rooker's face, like his entire body even, like even the tentacles, I believe those were all, actually filmed live on a set. And this film has some of Gunn's trademark humor. There's a scene where Michael Rooker, who has been possessed by an alien slug, goes to a supermarket, and he's browsing through the meat section, and he just says the word meat over and over again. He's just like, meat, 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 meat. Gotta love that trademark James Gunn humor. By the way, I can't wait for the Suicide Squad. That looks like a gory good time. I'm gonna take my wife to see that because she's a big Harley Quinn fan, and we both like Birds of Prey, so we can't wait to see that. Okay, one of my favorite Tim Burton films, Sweeney Todd, The Demon Barber of Fleet Street, another horror musical. This film is a bloody good time. And okay, I've made this argument before. Johnny Depp and Helena Bonham Carter don't have fantastic singing voices, but they act so well. Like the emotions they convey in this movie are just incredibly strong. They don't have the greatest singing voices, but you can still sympathize with their characters. They can still deliver very effective performances, even though their voices, aren't the best. And Alan Rickman, he plays an evil judge in this movie. And by the way, this has one of my favorite dark jokes in all of cinema. There's a scene where Alan Rickman is overseeing this trial. He has like his judge wig on, with the curls and everything. And we don't see who he is talking to at first, but he sentences this person to hang by the neck. And then it cuts to this little boy who has been put on trial, and Alan Rickman just sentenced this little boy to hang by the neck. I mean, this film is just full of dark, ghoulish humor like that. And this was Tim Burton's first full-blown musical. I mean, he had incorporated musical elements in his films before, particularly in Beetlejuice, but he does a really good job here. And also, the opening credits in this sequence, by God, the opening credits, some of my favorite in all of cinema. If you're squeamish, I wouldn't give Sweeney Todd a chance because it does involve cannibalism. It's not exactly the most lighthearted premise, but if you're into that sort of thing, well, let me say this. I'm not into cannibalism, but if you're into, the ghoulish and the bizarre, you'll definitely enjoy this film. Okay, I have a box set here for you guys. It's the Vincent Price collection. Some of my favorite movies are in this collection. You have The Pit and the Pendulum, The Mask of the Red Death, The Fall of the House of Usher, and of course, The Abominable Dr. Phibes. And I just picked this up recently. I haven't actually watched any of these. Well, I've watched all these films, but I haven't watched them, on Blu-ray yet. So I'm very excited to do that. This was released by Scream Factory, and the cool thing is that some of these films have extended cuts. Like The Mask of the Red Death, there's an extended cut on here. I didn't even know that existed, so that'll be very intriguing to see. I mean, Vincent Price, he was just a connoisseur of pop culture. He loved being in these types of movies. He didn't look down on this material. In fact, he embraced it. He loved starring in horror films. That was his passion. That was what he felt like he was made to do, and he was always fantastic. So I'm very excited to watch these again on Blu-ray. I'm sure they'll look great, and yeah, the extended cuts, that'll definitely be something new. Alright guys, we have 2 more films here. So like I mentioned at the start of this video, Barnes & Noble right now has a sale going on for the Criterion Collection of 50% off all titles. So I picked up The Vanishing. The Vanishing! One of the most disturbing endings for a film ever. If you have an intense fear of being buried alive, this film definitely won't do you any favors. It definitely will make your fears of being buried alive vanish. Stay away from the crappy American remake starring Jeff Bridges. That film is just dog poopy. This film, though, here's another thing I really like about this movie, and it actually makes me feel really giddy inside. Okay, so for those who haven't seen the movie, the premise is that this man's wife is essentially kidnapped at this public gas station. And there are sequences set at this gas station where, they're filmed in broad daylight. There's a good number of people there. It's a crowded area, so you wouldn't expect anyone to be kidnapped in a public place like this because there's just so many people there. But what's so scary about it is that she does get kidnapped, right under the nose of all these people, and it shows that horrific events like this can happen in crowded public areas. That to me is just so terrifying. And again, the ending, it might make one claustrophobic. The Vanishing is one of my favorite foreign horror films of all time. Again, please stay far, far away from the American remake. Like I said, that film is dog doo-doo. It is shit. It is poop. Stay away. Alright, last, but I'm gonna say least because this isn't one of my favorite horror films. The Woman in Black. The reason that I picked this up was because they were having a deal going on. I think it was like buy 3 Blu-rays, get 1 for free. So I just bought this on a whim. It was free. It says $7.99, but it was, in that pile. So it's fine. It was made by Hammer, believe it or not. I think this was actually the first film Hammer had released in many years. Daniel Radcliffe, who's known mostly for playing Harry Potter, he does a fine job here. It's a pretty typical, haunted house movie. The best thing about it is its location. The location is this rundown mansion that is just standing, in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by this bog, essentially, like this never-ending swamp. I love the location of this movie, but the rest of it is pretty average. I don't regret buying it or anything. I'll probably watch it again. I've seen it once, and Daniel Radcliffe, like I said, is totally, he's effective. Alright, well, that was fun. Alright guys, thank you so much for joining me in my 6th Blu-ray update video. If you have any suggestions on what I should buy next, please leave them down in the comment section down below. And, my horror collection is growing a little more every month, and as long as they keep making them, I'll keep buying them. I just love collecting horror movies. I love collecting Blu-rays. I still enjoy physical media. I like holding them in my hands. That's just my preference. But again, guys, thank you again so much. And as far as what we're going to do next, we definitely have some awesome ideas in store for you guys. Can't wait to get started on those. But as always, if you liked what you saw here, please subscribe to my spooky YouTube channel, Round the Clock Frights. And please, if you have any suggestions, leave them down below. And as always, take care, boils and ghouls. Have a very scary day. And whatever you do, don't get caught in a time warp. Alright guys, take care. Bye.